Right. Alongside members of the committee today, I am joined by, I'm Victoria Alcock, I'm the chair of this committee. I've got Marcia Eccleston, Head of Law and Governance and our Monitoring Officer. Got Jessica Lyle, give us a wave. Hi Jessica. Financial Services Manager. Paul Clark, Warwickshire County Council Internal Audit Manager. Hello. Karen Jones from Assets. Hello Karen. And Sam Selmsdick he'll be around somewhere. And we have Howard Allison from Democratic Services. Committee members, when invited to address the meeting, please ensure your microphone is switched on so that it is picked up via the live audio feed. When you have finished addressing the meeting, please turn off your microphone immediately. And it has been raised to us that there have been issues in this committee and others of people not speaking directly into the microphone, so you're not being picked up. So if we can all just try to be a little bit aware. And please ensure you've switched off or to silent any of the devices you have that may interrupt the proceedings. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live and members of the public not in attendance today are able to view the proceedings. Now got all that out of the way, we'll move on with the agenda. So item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Hedges-Serafin, for whom Councillor Johnston is substituting. And we have apologies from Councillor Keithley, for whom Councillor Rice is substituting.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, disclosure of any interest, please. Members, do you have any interest you need to disclose now? Please do so if you can. That's no interests. Right. Item 3, minutes. If there are any points members wish to raise, can you please indicate? Otherwise, I'll take the minutes as noted. Councillor Shenton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very simple one, really. Towards the back end of the minutes, section 161, to do with Assets external audit update. The penultimate paragraph says, in response to a query regarding the why Assets did not start auditing from 2023. That should be a bit more specific, I feel, because it concerned the pension accounts, not the normal accounts, because the ordinary accounts go back to 21-22 where there's a problem, whereas the pension accounts, we were talking, I think we were talking about the last triennial valuation, which was why this particular, and my apologies for not raising this sooner, I only read the minutes, I only read this morning, so yeah, I know, otherwise I wouldn't be raising it now, but it should read, or have a note saying that this concerned the pension accounts. So in response to a query regarding why Assets did not start auditing from 2023, as the pension accounts were already available, something like that. It could just do with an insert, and then I'd be happy with that.
Committee, are the rest of you in agreement with that note, please? Agreed. Any unhappy with that note? Then I will request that the minute be amended. Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other points members would like to raise, please? Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you. I just had a query about 158, the Internal Audit Annual Report, relates to the penultimate, or actually just before the penultimate point. It says updates from management team in relation to the action plan would be sought in the autumn. So it's now the autumn, just wondering if that has been done. And the point above, it says it was agreed that more information regarding the 1 fundamental and 3 significant actions would be provided following the meeting. So I just wanted to check if those 2 points had been met.
Thank you, Councillor Ostrander. We'll come on to that part 2 update in the meeting. Currently, it's just to check the accuracy. But thank you for raising that, because we can ensure it is addressed over the course of the meeting. Are there any other points currently, members? Then I will take the minutes as noticed with the alteration as requested. Okay, question number item number 4. Do you need me to take a vote on the minutes? Do you want me to vote on it? On the minutes? No. No. Right. Public participation. Questions for the public? I have received none. So on to item number 5. Update on standard issues. Can I please invite Marcia Eccleston to present her report as Monitoring Officer? Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Chair. So you have the report before you, and the key pages to note are obviously 9 onwards. On page 9 is table 1, which you can see before you is for this reporting year, the Code of Conduct complaints which have been dealt with or are open. Just to say that since this report was done, there have been 2 more complaints that have been received. So I just wanted to update you that there would be another 2 to this report since we submitted it. In terms of a comparator for last year, clearly we're only halfway through the year, so it's probably likely that that will happen at the end of this financial year that we do that. Okay, that takes me then on to page 10, and in particular table 1A. And in table 1A, this is not a table that we provide all the time, but it was something that I thought it would be useful for you to see on this occasion. And you'll see that we were recording the average number of working days that it might take for a complaint to be dealt with. And the one with the reference to 127 days, may I just explain that that matter went out to formal investigation. Just to explain a little bit further, there are certain complaints that are dealt with by myself. All the complaints and the decision making is reached with by myself, largely speaking, or the monitoring officer team. But if they are complaints that hit the first stage criteria, which is published, you can all see it on our website, it's dealt with by myself. If it is something that hits the second stage criteria, then it has to go out to investigation. And I'm very ably assisted by both our independent persons who are here today. And I just wanted to say thank you to Ed and Mike for their support. Okay. In terms of the reference to, again on page 2, a reference to number 2 on page 2, so further down that page, I have explained that we are doing a lot of training now across the district around standards. And so in terms of the most recent training that I did involving that, it was across August and July sort of thing. I am doing some training this month, but on something slightly different, and that is around well-being for members, which I'm sure you've all been notified about. Okay. And in terms of point 4 at the bottom of page 10, I've referenced the Strengthening Standards Conduct Framework for Local Authorities in England. Well, obviously, that consultation's closed now, but the hope is that some of the feedback will be and form part of the devolution bill, which you all know about, which is also seeking to address some of the issues around standards. Okay. Just going on to page 3 or page 11. So it's page 3 if you're looking at the data, but it's actually page 11 in your bundle. Under the quarterly information on governance data, it's the bottom table I wanted to highlight to you, because for 25 to 26, there have been no ICO decision notices held against us thus far. Obviously, that could change because we're only halfway through the year, but it's good news. And just going over the page onto page 13 on the freedom of information breakdown. So in terms of the ICO, they expect 90% of requests to be responded to by the baseline. And for the target period that we were looking at, we were 93.4%. So again, a good news story. And in terms of referencing data breaches reported to the ICO on page 14, you'll see for the period we haven't had any that thus far have been reported to the ICO. So that's, again, another good news story. Okay, so one of the things that I did talk about in this very same report is the lesson learning report, and it's on the agenda as a follow-up item, quite separate to this, so you'll forgive me if I won't go through that now. At the appointed time when the chair agrees, and if you all agree, we'll go into confidential session in a particular way, and then we can open that up then. Well, that's all I wanted to say at this particular stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Excellent report as always. I'll open it up to the floor. Members, if you would like to speak, please indicate. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yes, so on page 9 and page 10, CC 093, there is an ongoing matter which has 2 blanks left to it, and indeed on the chart on table 1A it has 2 blanks. It's been going on quite some time, every year. Do we have any indication of how many days this has taken, and when a resolution might come forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Chair. Just going back to the process that I was talking to you about that's published on our website, and I'm quite happy to reiterate it here. I explained that there were 2 stages of investigation and review. But there are some matters, if required, they might need to take longer, and that's allowed for in that process. I can't really say much else without breaching any confidentialities. At some point, if we need to, we'll be able to, once we get to the end of that, I'll be able to give you the actual breakdown of that matter as well, but not now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Councillor Shenton, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. When we talk about average number of working days on page 2 or 10, whichever version of the numbering we want to run with, we're actually not talking about the actual number of days spent on this case. We're talking about the time lapsed, aren't we?
So we use a case management system, and so from the day it's opened to the day we close it, that's what we use. But if we were being very sort of technical about it, or a little bit more theoretical about it, then there's all the thinking time, or the consideration time on top of that as well.
If you have a follow-up, yes, please do.
Just to come back on that one. Following your argument, you would say that all those on there, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, are reviewed every single day. It's a moot point, but the point being that I wouldn't want 127 days. I'd be amazed if we actually spent 127 days looking at it. It's just for clarification, as much as anything, so members aren't misled by the fact that it's an elapsed time, not a work, actual hours time. It's not like, if you like, a booked time.
So in terms of how we record the time that we pick up is on a case management system, so it's also picking up the time that you actually spend in the file, or at least that's what it should be doing. Now, I'm not an expert about these things, but that's what it should be doing. On the matter where I said it was 127 days, it was also a matter that went to an outside investigator. So if you like, there was my review, then out to the investigator for however long that needed, then back to myself for the final review and the decision making. So If we had to be completely forensic about it, yes, there could be an argument that we need to go and ask the investigator exactly how many days they did too. But in total on the system, what we clocked was that's the day we received it, that's the day it ended.
Yes,
I think
Vicky?
what you're saying is, yeah, it's just elapsed time, because otherwise you're saying that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, roughly 10 cases there, you'd have 10 people working on them full time, so it's elapsed. I think that was what you're saying, Marcy. I accept 127 is farmed out, but all the other ones, it's elapsed time.
Yeah, just to clarify, the 127 days wasn't for when it was all farmed out, it included my time as well. Okay.
Thank you. Members, any other comments or queries on this? No? Okay. And you've completed your report, so we will move on to item... Yes, I beg your pardon. So if there's no other further comments, is the report noted, please, councillors? Noted. Thank you very much. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for that, though, please? Councillor Strander proposing, Councillor Shenton seconding. Thank you very much. All in favour, please, councillors? That is unanimous, yes. Okay, then we'll move on to item number 6. We now need to move into confidential session, exclusion of the public. Committee, can I ask you to please to vote if you agree to hear the next item in private session? So, that pursuant to section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, the public be excluded from the remaining business of the meeting in view of the fact that the nature of the proceedings will be such that if the public were present, there be likely be disclosure to them of exempt information under paragraphs 1 and 2 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the said Act as amended. So, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Littlewood, thank you very much, and a seconder. Councillor Johnson, thank you very much. We'll just wait for the stream to be cut. Thank you, councillors and members. We are now back on the live stream, and just for confirmation, that report has been noted. We are now moving on to item 8, the CCTV Code of Practice in Value 2025. Welcome to the meeting, Sam Selmsbeck, and I invite you please to present this report. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. It's lovely to see you all. So by way of introduction, my name is Sam Slamensek, and I'm the Community Safety Manager here at Stratford-on-Avon District Council. So this afternoon, I'm here to present a report on the CCTV Code of Practice for 2025 and the Scheme Evaluation Report of 2025. I'll provide a brief summary of the paper, and then obviously more than happy to take questions thereafter. So the CCTV service in Stratford-on-Avon District Council is a 24/7 public space CCTV monitoring service which assists in the response to crime and antisocial behaviour within the district. The scheme assists police officers and businesses in responding to crime as it happens, providing a live CCTV feed to the police control room, and assisting in directing police resources to live events. As of the period of April 2024 to April 2025, the CCTV control room dealt with 6,512 incidents and used the cameras over 91,000 times in that period of time. Also within that period, there was over 16,000 dedicated patrols across the district, which obviously averages out to around 43 per day. The CCTV service continues to operate to really high standards, and in particular operating to British Standard 7958, which is a specific standard around the operation and management of public space CCTV control rooms. It's actually the 18th year that we've achieved this accreditation which is quite the achievement. And this particular year, there has been no recommendations following that independent audit. The District Council CCTV is operating in partnership with local towns and parish councils. The scheme covers over 129 cameras, which obviously includes some of our SDC car parks. The CCTV service not only responds to incidents of crime and ASB, but also supports a number of other internal functions supporting SDC and statutory services. So we provide evidence of things like licensing, street scene, sort of relevant committees there, and evidence being provided for things like the licensing committee, also in relation to things like parking, littering, fly tipping as well. We also provide a really vital role in relation to homelessness services and street outreach within our towns, and providing that multi-agency response to those sorts of issues. Similarly, we work really closely with other emergency services such as the NHS, mental health services, in responding to welfare incidents, missing incidents as well. So to give you a little bit of an idea about the level of demand that we deal with, we've dealt with over that period from April to April, 259 missing incidents within that particular year. We've responded to 715 concerns for welfare, and we've dealt with over 15 high-risk medical emergencies as well. So obviously as a district council, we seek to attain high standards of practice within the CCTV control room. That specific standard that I referenced earlier is obviously a specific standard for CCTV, and it's the way in which we ensure that members of the public who are obviously concerned about surveillance and how we operate those systems have an appropriate set of procedures and governance system in place. We have what's called the Code of Practice, which is part of the appendices in the report pack today, which obviously covers and provides reassurance to members of the public as to how we operate. In preparation for our independent audit assessment called the British Standard Assessment, we also have the evaluation report, which is also attached in your papers today, which effectively provides before our audit process a bit of guidance on obviously how we're doing in relation to that before the audit is carried out by our independent consultant. The audit was carried out on the 5th of June, and as I stipulated earlier, that was fully passed with no recommendations being required. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank obviously all the officers, CCTV team for their incredibly hard work over that period of time. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank members of this committee as well, who I know from the last audit and standards meeting that we had, wanted to visit the control room. I know a number of you have had. So obviously we really appreciate you coming along and obviously speaking with operators there. I'd ask that obviously in any questions or observations that you do make about that, you don't disclose any specifics as to what you saw or anything in relation to the location there. But that's a bit of a summary of the paper. I'm more than happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, and it was a very in-depth report, so thank you for that. Councillors, have any of you got any questions you'd like to ask regarding the CCTV out and about? Please do. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you, Sam. Really good report. On page 84, there's a chart showing incident reports by CCTV operators. Is that, I didn't think we ran Belcourt, but is that a typo, 8,329?
No, that is correct. I believe, and sorry, I'm just trying to get to the exact page.
An awful lot just for that one area.
So we've got a section 106 with Belcourt, so they're not actually our CCTV cameras,
they're
but
not.
we do get a feed. So it is actually an area that through section 106 agreement that we monitor and once again respond to, as well as being linked to on the retail radio.
Sorry, we monitor on their behalf.
No, so they will monitor their cameras, they can use it, they can produce it in evidence, but we have a feed that comes back to our CCTV control room, which is part of the stipulation of a section 106 from around 10 years ago. So we provide that, we can monitor it proactively, but they, so for example, if the police want to come and take evidence from Belcourt, they would actually go to basically the hard drive in Belcourt to obtain that evidence. But we can effectively assist in incident response there through retail radio, through having a live view as well. So say, for example, they have security provision in Belcourt. Those security officers might want to go deal with an incident, but then because we have a feed, we can actually interact with them on retail radio, providing updates as they go. So it just assists in the prevention detection of crime in incidents there.
Okay. So if I just may come back, Chair. 8,329 is like, I mean, compared to the rest of Stratford-upon-Avon town, it just seems such a high number.
Yeah. So
do you not kind of worry about that?
yeah, probably the easiest way to explain it is because when we look at each of those figures on page 84, you've got them broken down by town. So effectively, when you carry out a patrol, and it's probably easier if I try and describe a patrol, that 91,000 camera use I was talking about is when operators are using cameras. They're using them all the time. But we have something called patrols, which is where an operator will do a tour of an entire town. So let's just say Stratford-upon-Avon as the first example there, where they will check every single angle of the CCTV that's there. It's a systematic trawl of everything on screen. Now, for a town of Stratford size, and I can't remember the exact numbers now, but there's 29 plus cameras there. So that entire patrol, one patrol, has to go through each of those 29 cameras. When you then look at Belcourt, all of Belcourt's cameras are static, so they're not movable. So it's much easier because there's less camera numbers, but there's also the fact that they're static. Obviously, to carry out a patrol, it's much easier to obviously do that. It takes less time. So that's one of the reasons that would contribute to a higher number of patrols there per se, because versus Stratford, which would take to do one patrol probably 30 plus minutes, to go through all the cameras in Belcourt might take a minute or two.
Okay. Okay, Councillor. Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you. My question has been answered.
That's impressive, answering two questions at the same time. Well done. Oh, you do have a question after all.
Oh, not a question, actually, but I just want to say well done. 18 years success record, I think, is really worth applauding. So good job. Thank you.
Agree. Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you. I'm page 86, 22 on the internal report. I'm just curious, during 24-25, there are 69 cameras which fell below the above criteria, the criteria being those that perform an average, at least an average number of uses. What's happening to those?
Thank you, Councillor Rice. I'll try and explain this, but do come back to me if you have any questions just about the nature of the explanation. So effectively, those 69 cameras, as you've identified, were a part of the assessment where they've looked at the overall number of uses of that camera. There is a criteria within here, which is around, I think it's 255 uses. So when you then explore the number of cameras within our scheme that actually retrieve that data, so say, for example, going back to Councillor Rolfe's point around Bell Court, we do have a number of static cameras which actually we can't retrieve that data from. So the vast majority of those 69 cameras form the Bell Court cameras, and then our remaining static cameras. There's then actually, when you look at the, you do a deep dive analysis of it, there's then actually only 12 cameras that are non-static, non-Bell Court cameras that actually fall under that usage. So what we've then done as a result of that audit is we've done a deep dive, myself and the CCTV manager, into each specific camera. That meeting was held in August. And effectively what we've been able to do is we've been able to attribute to each of those 12 cameras specific reasons why they've not been used to that threshold. Now, without going through a list of each of those, to probably summarise, it's a little bit of a mixture of where we've had flooding. So say, for example, we've had a few cameras on the recreation ground where there's been flooding during that period, which actually have taken them out of action. There's sometimes been one or two technical faults that have led to some of those being offline for periods. Some of those cameras also include cameras that we've only just commissioned as well. So for that year period, actually, they've only been there a number of months. So all of those 12 cameras, there's specific actions which are likely to bring them for the next year period well above that threshold. But that's something that we'd continue to monitor going forward.
Councillor Rolfe, please.
I'm really sorry, I need to go back to the Bell Court thing because I need to understand it a bit more. So Bell Court have 18 cameras, static cameras, around Bell Court. Is someone monitoring those on a 24-hour basis? Like what happens, that's not English really, is it? But like what happens at the CCTV place where it is in Bridgefield. So is somebody monitoring those static cameras 24 hours a day?
So Bell Court have a security provision, a security office there. I wouldn't be able to guarantee the amount or duration by which they monitor those cameras, but I would assume that there would be ad hoc, at least, monitoring of them. And those individuals can obviously monitor them as much or as little as they like. I can't guarantee or answer now as to what their particular regime is. But in terms of then from a Stratford District Council perspective, those images are fed through to our control room, and obviously our service is 24/7. So actually if there is an incident at any point in Bell Court, we can obviously look at those images and then obviously provide advice or guidance to policing services, Bell Court security at any material time.
But you won't pick... I'm sorry, I need to understand. You won't pick those incidences up live, so to speak?
So we have a live
at Bell
feed.
Court.
Yep, so we can pick those incidents up. You've got effectively a system that it's a bit like a lot of housing schemes where sometimes they'll feed into a control room. So the Bell Court CCTV system, as an incident happens, it might be that their security personnel are out at that time. They're actually in Bell Court. It might be that we get a call, let's just say from another retailer in town, that actually a theft has happened and actually they're going through Bell Court. We would then obviously respond. We'd use that retail radio. It might be that those officers then go out of their security office to go and confront those individuals, in which case we'll then monitor that for them. So the benefit of having those two feeds is clearly those personnel who work in Bell Court can go out and deal with an incident, but know that we're monitoring and we can provide feeds and security to, if that incident escalates, let's just say, somebody was to get assaulted, we would then be providing communications to Warwickshire Police as they're dealing with them.
Okay, Councillor. Thank you. So, Councillor Rice, please.
You mentioned earlier in your report the SDC car parks, and I note that on page, whatever it is, 97 or 33, that they seem to be zero as well. And I just wondered, following up from the Bell Court question, why they're zero?
That is a great question. To attempt to provide a truly technical response, I probably couldn't do. But as you might be able to tell, there seems to be a bit of an issue in terms of camera uses and static cameras, effectively, whether that's part of the other scheme that we talked about or internally. So it just so happens that every time we try and click onto that, it's slightly different in terms of the way that the data comes back versus a camera where that movement is entirely tracked, versus when we obviously click onto it, it's just not recording in that way. It is something that obviously it would be useful for future evaluations to obviously be able to see. So that is something that we're working with our contractors around, if there is any way in which we can pick that up, even if it's separately, but just to feed into this. But unfortunately this time with those static cameras, we just can't obtain that data from it at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, members? Right. Then sorry? Councillor Rice, did you have another question? Sorry.
Sorry. I was curious about Earlswood. We brought up the 8,000 in Bell Court, and I'm now struggling to find the page. But I noticed Earlswood was also remarkably high and higher than Stratford. And I noticed the councillor, ward member for Earlswood is nodding. So I'm curious, is it a hotbed of something?
Yeah, thank you, councillor. So similarly with Earlswood, actually, there's one CCTV camera there. So actually, in terms of carrying out those patrols, it is slightly easier to obviously, and requires less time to do that as well. So versus a scheme like Stratford, where you've obviously got 20 plus cameras, where it would take, like we said, half an hour or so to do that systematically. So that's probably one of the contributing factors for that, that differential. But we're always conscious of obviously crime trends, crime patterns, obviously proactive monitoring of those cameras.
Thank you. Councillor Shenton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation, actually, because there's lots of data, obviously, in here. If we look at page 92 onwards, there's loads of data there. But there's a couple of things that sort of stand out amongst this is that ASB and concern for welfare have dramatically increased over the last 3 years. And I suppose the question for you, Sam, is what can we do about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I suppose from a CCTV perspective, I was just having a quick look at concern for welfare, ASB. It looks like ASB is down, I think, from my recollection, which was about 365 incidents versus 846 for the period 2023 to 2024. So there are some decreases. Concern for welfare is a very challenging category because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of sort of public health implications in obviously looking after individuals. So it's a really, really challenging thing for our operators to obviously change that particular trend, let's just say. I think for me, the most important thing from a CCTV service perspective is making sure that the processes are right in terms of triaging when those calls come in, making sure that there's really proactive ways in identifying that. And I do see it as a positive sometimes when actually it's very difficult to tell when an increase, let's just say in certain incidents, is actually through more proactive work on the ground with retailers. You know, we've got to acknowledge that actually within towns, our retail radio schemes, there's more users than before. There's more mechanisms in which people can get in touch with us. So actually sometimes those increases, particularly in those sorts of categories, can actually be a positive thing because we're picking them up earlier, we're triaging them earlier. I can't really provide a really definitive answer on concern for welfare. In terms of antisocial behaviour, once again, that's a really interesting category to attempt to unpick, and I think we could probably spend the best part of this committee and into tomorrow discussing antisocial behaviour. I think what we need to look at, if I'm trying to generalise a little bit, is actually in terms of antisocial behaviour, when we look at in the towns in which we cover, there does seem to be a decrease in antisocial behaviour in the hotspots in which we monitor. There's been a lot of operations specifically within the district in certain hotspots that relate to antisocial behaviour. So for example, in Stratford town, you've got things like Op Resolve, Op Couches 1 and 2, you've got Observator, you've got some really specific operations which have driven down antisocial behaviour in terms of the figures that we're now seeing beyond the period of this evaluation into the latter part of 2025. So we can kind of see a general trend which is beyond these papers as well, that's showing that actually a lot of that real proactive work is driving down those figures. So it's always really challenging with incident data to try and sometimes attribute causation behind it as well, because we've seen with theft, I'm sure members of the committee will be aware that nationally there's a lot of discussion about theft and shoplifting increasing substantially. What's really interesting in Warwickshire is that there was a dedicated business crime and retail crime team, which actually, upon their introduction, we actually saw really increased figures. But the reality is that when you then try and deep dive into that, it's because there's positive detections taking place, and actually you then start to see eventually a decrease because of the effect of the interventions that take place. We also saw it with rape and sexual offences, where actually there was a rise when there was a new dedicated police within Warwickshire Police, who actually now we're seeing out of all the forces in the UK, we're seeing the highest outcome rates for rape and sexual offences in terms of convictions. But obviously that initial increase often is because of those changes in practice.
Thank you. Yes, you follow up, yes.
Yeah, you got to the point I was hoping you would make, that in actual fact the increases are not necessarily because there's an increased prevalence, but actually the increased detection and public awareness of some of these incidents, and CCTV plays its part in the whole gamut, if you like. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Councillor Olsen and Councillor Jenny Fradley, please.
So, the new cameras. It says here on the list on page 96 that Wood Street and Henley Street are quite new. They were commissioned in March 25, is that correct? Yeah? So, I thought the Evesham Road one was a new one as well. Can you just go through that list? There are like 3 or 4 that have been put in the last maybe year, 2 years. Is that Wood Street, Henley Street, Evesham Road is new, I think, Jenny, isn't it? It was done, yeah. Is the station bridge on East Ulster Road new as well?
Yeah, so there's a number of cameras, and this report specifically relates to the period April 2024 to April 2025. So, say for example, the camera that you reference on Evesham Road, the roundabout there, that was done prior to this report, so that wouldn't show up as newly commissioned. Cameras 4 and 5, so Wood Street, Henley Street, actually we've had cameras there for probably about 10 years plus. So, yeah. But the reason in which they've just put commissioned in March 2025 was because actually we introduced new cameras there because effectively they were faulty, so they were newly commissioned, but replacing cameras that were in an old position as a previous. In relation to your other question, so similarly with the ones in Bidford, the High Street ones, that's exactly the same. We've had those cameras there for a significant numbers of years, but the actual camera itself has just been replaced, hence the word commissioning there as well. There are a number of cameras which members, particularly within the Stratford Town ward, will be aware, well, we've put redeployable cameras up in a number of sort of new locations more recently as well.
Oh, that's right.
as a-
That's what I thought, and that's why. But are they?
Yeah.
They're not listed here.
I was going to say, so these aren't necessarily listed here in this report because they're what we call redeployable CCTV cameras. So they're not, let's just say for the purposes of this, permanent cameras which are fixed in that location for a long period of time. They can be moved, hence they're not recorded in here, but we also can't get the camera usage similar to the static cameras because they're a different type of tech. We can't report on the usage of them as of yet, so they don't feature within this list.
But they
there
might come in the next report of the usage.
Yeah, so we can certainly look at, similarly to the static cameras that we were discussing earlier, it's something that we're trying to look at, obviously obtaining data on their usage around.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Okay, Councillor Fradgley, have you got your question? I've just had it raised to me that we're looking at the code of practice and this evaluation report. I know it's to note it, though it is quite fascinating learning about the different parts, but just to keep the agenda tight, please.
Just very briefly, I was interested in the street drinking results. 180 in Stratford and none elsewhere. It was just, are we the only town with a drinking problem, street drinking problem? But it doesn't need a lot of comment on it. It's just an observation that it seems to be very much out of balance.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fradgley. No, certainly Stratford is not the only town in the district where those sorts of issues do take place. We do always have to be cognizant of the fact that we have, particularly within Stratford, more cameras than other towns as well. So actually picking up on some of these in those relevant locations might be a contributing factor to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Very, very quickly, just wanted clarification. Breach of condition, bottom of page 28 of the internal report. What does that stand for?
Yeah, that's a great question. It covers a multitude of different conditions. So it might be, say, for example, police bail, court bail, breach of various different conditions, which can range from things like domestic violence protection orders, notices. So it's an all-encompassing, let's just say, term for various kind of legal powers, primarily police powers, but also antisocial behaviour powers, which can be issued by us. It's the easiest way to try and record it, but then we can obviously break down categories of that within the reports.
Thank you. Go on then, Councillor Shenton. Make it a quick one then.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very quick one. Are we comparing like with like on some of these stats? Because if we look at the national stats for robbery, for instance, robbery nationally increased by 4%, Warwickshire increased by 9%. Are the definitions of robbery the same between the police and our definition? Because these definitions matter when you're looking at stats. And if it's not possible to answer it now, I mean, just let me know. But I'm pretty certain that I know what the answer will be. But
Yeah, to provide a brief response, in terms of police definitions, and obviously from a legislative perspective, that's covered within the Theft Act, so that is standard across the UK in terms of how forces should be interpreting that. You'll find there is going to be a differentiation between statistics that are borne out at a national level. There's then a difference between certain police statistics based on incident reporting versus, and those are often the ones you find on like live sort of police.co.uk websites, versus finalised crime statistics, which is when the police have had the opportunity to actually investigate those. So a lot of statistics that you will find publicly are when a member of the public or someone has phoned it in, the initial call handler has said, it seems like it's this, but then when officers go out and investigate it, it could be a theft and an assault, or it could be a burglary, or it could be another offence. So there is often a difference in statistics. If you then break down those figures to a Stratford level, whilst I won't go through them because they're different from the data sets, you'll then find that actually that isn't the case here in particular. So there are nuances between the different types of data that are and aren't publicly available as well.
Right, okay. Thank you. Right then, so the recommendation is that the CCTV Code of Practice 2025 and the CCTV Evaluation Report 2025, together with the actions taken to ensure the CCTV service remains effective, be noted. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Strander, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Rolfe. Thank you. All in favour of that, please, councillors. And that is unanimous, but Councillor Littlewood isn't in the room. But thank you for that. So the report is noticed. Thank you very much for your time, Sam. It's been very interesting.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Right, we will move on to the internal audit report. Just give a moment for people to move as they wish. And then we will move straight on. I'd like to invite Paul Clark to the meeting. Hello, welcome again. Would you please present your award? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our latest update report on the work of internal audit. Section 2 talks about the finalisation of the 24-25 audit work, most of which was included within the annual report, but we've now got to the point where all of that work has now been finalised. So there's a slight typo in paragraph 2.1 where it says 2 have been completed and 1 is at draft stage. That should actually read all 3 have now been completed, because it went from draft to final between when we produced the report and when it went out to publication. So they are all complete. We've also just made a slight change to the level of detail that we've included within the report. So you'll note on that table in 2.1 that there's a red down arrow for the crime reduction community safety audit. And because of that, what we've added is that note on 2.2, which is trying to give the committee a bit more information about why it's showing as a substantial assurance and a down arrow, because that was something that was asked before. So hopefully just explaining that it's substantial, which is still very positive as an audit, but the items that were found, there were 3 actions that were identified, and a brief summary of what they are. Hopefully that's helpful to members. Section 3 of the report then looks at the current year's plan, 25-26 audit plan. First audit is one which was reported to the previous committee, and then we've got 2 completed audits, the payroll and building control reports completed over the summer, and we've got a number of audits also in progress. Overall, we're on course to complete the audit work as planned during the current financial year. So I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Always, yes, when you talk about the red arrows and the amber arrows and the green arrows, etc., our reports come out black and white. So we do sort of have to look and go, is that the red arrow he means, or could that be the amber one? just to say that. Yes, councillors, any comments, please? Any questions to Paul? Monitoring officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the reference to crime reduction and community safety and the substantial finding, I think I just wanted to pick up what you've referenced at 2.2, which was of the 3 actions that were required, 2 were green and 1 was amber. But reading them, having read them myself, I understood them to mostly be about how we could record more of the work we're doing with some of the partners that we work with within crime reduction. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, they're all related to that aspect of the review. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions, members? Goodness, you're being let off easy today then. Thank you very much for the update. We're just going to note this. So recommendation is that this report is noted. Can I have a proposer, please, to note this report? Councillor Shenton, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Organ, thank you very much. All in favour, please, councillors. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The report is noted. And moving on to item 10. ASET's External Audit Plan for 2024-25. I invite Karen Jones. Hello, Karen. Welcome again. From ASET's to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This sets out our planned work for 24-25, and there are three distinct areas within the plan. The first being the audit of the 24-25 statement of accounts. The second being value for money and consideration of the Council's value for money arrangements. And the third, as an appendix, is our indicative plan to build back the assurance from the previous disclaimed audits. Focusing on the audit of the 24-25 statement of accounts, the plan sets out the scope of our work, including the materiality levels that we have set at the planning stage. It sets out the significant risk areas that we've identified during the planning stage, and just taking those in turn, the first three that we identify, management override of controls, expenditure recognition and revenue recognition, are presumed risks that you would find on any public, I'm going to say public sector audit, because expenditure recognition is unique to public sector, where we consider the risk of revenue recognition turning it on its head, because public sector bodies tend to be expenditure driven, not profit driven. In terms of management override, we cannot rebut that risk. We consider that to be a risk on every audit that we do. But for the risk around about expenditure recognition and revenue recognition, we have the opportunity to rebut it. And when I say rebut it, it means that actually considering for each individual body, such as this council, thinking about the nature of the income and expenditure that the council incurs, and given that we consider the potential for fraud in those areas, and we can rebut it given the controls and the arrangements and the nature of those transactions. And that is what we have done for this council. So we have reduced that risk from potentially very high or high down to low. We still carry out audit procedures, but it is a more reduced level given our risk assessment. The other areas that we have identified in our plan include the valuation of property, plant and equipment. And as members may recall, 24-25, in order to support that build back, is the year in which the council has carried out a full revaluation of its property portfolio. So we will be focusing our work largely in that area this year. The other area that is considered is pension valuations, and as we've discussed before and it was referred to earlier, because of the cycle of triennial valuations and where we are in terms of the build back, we will not be focusing our audit efforts this year on that area. We will wait until the outcome of the triennial valuation next year. In terms of value for money, we are required to consider the Council's arrangements for value for money and report on those separately as well. At the planning stages, we haven't identified any significant risk areas or identified in the previous year any key recommendations for the Council. we obviously have to carry out our work, and we will report back to the council in terms of our findings on value for money. Our plan also sets out our indicative fees for the year and also confirms our independence. I would highlight to the committee, we do actually provide what we call non-audit services in relation to the certification of the council's housing benefit subsidy claim. However, we have appropriate safeguards in place that are detailed in the plan to mitigate any conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest in terms of our independence. As noted, the appendix includes our indicative plan and work that we intend to do in terms of building back that assurance over the disclaimed audit periods. I didn't intend to go into any detail in that, given that we had that discussion at the last committee meeting. It is still in track. We are taking account of any guidance that comes out, developing our procedures, and the intention is that we will start to build back the assurance during the 24-25 audit with a view that we get to the position that we want to by 27-28. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for the report. Councillors, would any questions you'd like to ask of Karen about this report? Again, great report. I do find it easier to read. Councillor Shenton, please.
Sorry, I was deciding that Marcia pushed me into this. Because I was actually just thinking, well, do I bother asking this question? But here we go. So we talk about, there's a couple of things. We're not going to, as you say, go back over the ground, but 2027, 2028 is when we can expect a clean, hopefully a clean set of accounts. If I understood from the last meeting, that's the earliest we could expect. So we would probably look at, you would come and do the audit, start the audit about September 28, complete about January, February. You probably see where I'm going with this. With the unitary position, we're running right up against the 31st of March issue. That is still the case. It's the earliest, that's the earliest date you would be able to 2027-28 accounts is the earliest you're going to get these signed off.
Yeah, so that is the earliest that we could lift the disclaimed opinion and provide an unqualified opinion, subject to the audit cycle. Linked to that, however, there is the regulations include moving back to I'm going to say a normal audit cycle. And for 27-28, the actual backstop date is November 2028. So it wouldn't be February 2029. And as a result, our audit process will happen after potential local government reorganisation, but it will be in a more timely period than we're currently facing.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay.
So a follow-up to that would be, obviously with the triennial evaluation, it's been a detailed piece of work amongst, as well as the rest of the opening balances, if you like.
Sorry, Councillor Shenton, I am going to be a pest. Could I ask you to speak directly into
yeah,
the microphone?
I keep moving around, don't I? Yeah.
It's picked up, thank you.
After 7 years, you'd think I would have learned this, wouldn't you? Sorry about that, Chair.
Quite all right.
So we come back to there'll be pressures upon all external auditors from local authorities to complete this. Do you have enough resource, should I say? I'm thinking of holidays here now. Enough resource to actually complete this by November of 2028? Because that, in theory, that's a fairly short time period from the end of the year. You would normally come in around September to start the audit, and yet we're saying November 2028. Do you have the resources as an auditor to be able to manage that out?
At this moment in time, my response would be yes. We are relatively new entrant into local government in England, and we have developed our own team to build up and develop the skills and experience to enable us to deliver the contract that we have. I'm an auditor. I am going to caveat it with things can change between now and November 2028, but at this moment in time, that is what we have planned in terms of ensuring that we deliver against the contract.
Thank you. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm going on the same line, actually, because I'm not an accountant and I've been in business, so if I was in the commercial world and looking at what would be happening on the vesting date on the 1st of April of the new unitary authority, I would be, if that was a business that I was buying, I'd be deeply concerned about the situation we're in. And I'd like you to explain to me, and it may not be for you to answer, but it's a general question, Chair, if I may. And it seems likely that you will not be able to fully sign off on the accounts by the end of the 31st of March 2028. That means that there is uncertainty with regards to those assets that the accounts refer to. So if I was on the other side, on the new unitary authority, I'd be having to agree to accept assets which I really don't know are real. How do we get around that in law and in practical terms?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of looking ahead to what might be, without knowing what that legislation will be with the devolution bill, etc., going through, I think it might be slightly unfair to answer that right now. It might be something that they can take away and look at in a bit more detail. The reason why I'm saying that is because I am aware that under that devolution bill, there will be certain pieces of legislation where they will say from this day X will happen, for instance, which makes things so much clearer. We don't have that information yet. We don't know what that clarity is. So I think it's slightly unfair to ask that question just yet. But it may be that our external auditor can take that away with Jess and look at it in more detail as well and come back to you separately.
Thank you, Marcia. I can understand the answer. It doesn't answer my question, though, and I think that is a serious part of the question that we've been trying to get to throughout this whole series of meetings, and we still don't have an answer. At the end of the day, whoever's receiving the assets is signing to say that they accept that the assets are right. That's not, with respect, anything to do with the legislation. That is a point of fact. It's a bucket which is supposed to have stuff in it being handed to somebody else. And you know, if you go to the bank and you get your 100 quid out, they count it out and you count it out, and then you're both agreed.
I only come back to say this. Having a conversation about what that new legislation will say now, because it will impact, is probably unfair on the external auditor to answer just now, because they won't understand the legal position any more than we do, because we're still waiting to hear what's happening out of the devolution bill. So I take your point, but I think we need to look at the reality, which is we are waiting for legislation to come through. We need to understand a little bit more about what the government guidance is before we can really give any answers on that.
I'll keep my question in abeyance.
Thank you, because I do think it is an important question, and by raising it in today's meeting, it's something we can all have in the back of our mind, ready to bring forward as soon as we have the information. So thank you for raising it at today's meeting. It's always good to have a heads up of what's going to come in future meetings.
I'd agree.
So thank you. Councillors, any further questions to Karen or Jessica? Oh, goodness, both of you at the same time. Councillor Strander, please.
Thank you. This is actually linked to Councillor Shenton's questions and comments. So in terms of building back this assurance, on page 134, it talks about collaboration between the auditors and the council finance teams, being able to work collaboratively, but also both having capacity. So I guess we've been reassured that you at ASITS have capacity to do this work in time to get these accounts ready in the timeline that you've already pointed out to us. Are there any foreseeable obstacles or constraints within Stratford District Council in terms of that collaboration and meeting that timeline?
I can answer it, but I don't think so. Yeah, I suppose one of the areas that was highlighted at last committee is the risk and the challenge that if local government reorganisation happens on the 1st of April 2028, we are still required and we will still be looking to audit financial statements through to November 2028. And there is that risk that the council loses staff to the new body or loses staff just naturally because of the uncertainty. And Richard, as Section 151 officer, has highlighted that risk at the last committee meeting and I think is exploring different arrangements to mitigate those risks. But it is definitely a risk facing the council.
Thank you. Is that the only sort of concern that we have as a council?
I think so. I think so. That in terms of capacity, it's that loss of potential loss of experience, and the potential way to address that would be to bring in new people that don't have that experience to deliver something.
So I'm just coming in there. Excuse me, Councillor Strander. Yeah, as it was spoken about at the last committee meeting, you know, what we have now is working. We'll continue to make that work. And it's again, it's very much going into the unknown, but we're going into the unknown with a good team we have now. And that's what we'll be working to keep. Again, it's very hard to try and predict. They're very much unpredictable at this time. So what we have now is working, and it will continue to work. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Strander. Can I just come to, I'm just going to bring in, if it's all right, I'll come back to you, Councillor Shenton. I always do. I never forget about you. Councillor Curtis, as a portfolio holder, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just very briefly. I know, I have my weekly meetings with Section 151 Officer Mr. Burrell. He is well cognizant of the potential risks involved going ahead, particularly the potential loss of key staff. So all I would say is that he is well aware of the problems associated with local government reform, with the fact that we need to ensure that we retain the excellent staff that we have, and if needed, we do recruit additional staff to help us through that transition period. So all I would like to reassure the committee is that the Section 151 officer is well aware of what's involved, and I would just say we have an excellent financial team here.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Curtis, and yes, I thoroughly agree, we do have an excellent team. I'll come to Councillor Shenton, then Councillor Johnson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Notwithstanding the fact that you've got the resources and we've got currently got a really good team. Bearing in mind that, sorry, I'll move forward, sorry. Bearing in mind the fact that we, as you've highlighted, Karen, that we could lose key staff. Is there any way that the work, except for the triennial valuation work, the pension work, whether that could be accelerated before we start to see the exit of people, and at least when we get to the triennial, that is a highly technical piece of work anyway, which, if you like, without, if you like, doing down staff, it is a highly technical piece of work and specialised. Is there any way we can accelerate this so that we are just left in our final year with the triennial valuation to do?
Sorry, Councillor Shenton, I seem to make a habit of interrupting you, and I do beg your pardon. It's just being raised to me that these sorts of questions actually need to go to the Section 151 officer who isn't currently here. Perfectly valid questions, and I think it's important that they are raised directly with the officer, because currently we're just talking about the external report, and it's very, very easy to get into the what if, maybe, in this scenario. We don't know. That's why I think those questions need to go to Mr. Burrell rather than here. Of course you can.
So the reason for asking the question is to establish, if you like, whether you are getting enough support generally to be able to complete on time. We come back to the thorny question of 31st, and you said you've got resources, we've got a great team. It's having that understanding of, if you like, are you getting all the support that you need as well as the officers need from you?
So I can confirm we do have the support that we need, and if that was not the case, we would be coming back to committee and reporting that. There is the requirement that we have to have in order to lift the disclaimed opinion. We have to have 3 balance sheets and 2 I&Es and 3 balance sheets. And that is why we are saying that the earliest is 27-28, because partly due to the triennial valuation being in 25-26, that will give us the 3 balance sheets that we need. So while we can do as much as we possibly can in terms of building back the other balances, in reality, we still need those 3 balance sheets.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jessica, would you like to come in and make any comments on these scenarios? That's perfectly fine. Councillor Johnson, please.
I just wanted to follow up on Councillor Curtis's comment as the chair of the Employment Committee, that we are also concerned about business continuity and retention of staff.
Thank you for your comment on that, and that is something that we can be picking up outside this agenda and committee, but it's good to hear that it's obviously on everybody's radar. Right then, councillors, with recommendation is to note this report. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Shenton, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Ostrander. And all in favour, please, councillors. Thank you, that is unanimous. Karen, Jessica, thank you very much for your time. And again, Paul, thank you also. Right, item number 11, councillor questions. I haven't received any. Item number 12, any urgent business? I have no urgent business to report at this moment. So there being no further business, I declare the Audit and Standards Committee meeting